Patricia Cornwell is live with me now. Welcome to the program. This is awesome. I'm so glad that you're here. Thank you for being here.
Oh, thank you, Ashleigh. And I'm glad to be here. This is one of my favorite things to talk about, even though it's a very grim subject. And people tend to forget that these were unbelievably savage crimes. They were the violence in some of them is unlike anything I've ever seen. Mary Kelly was flayed to the bone. I mean, this is not some cute little ripper walk. This was a terrible serial killer. And the evidence that I've come upon from doing 20 years of this now indicate that there were more than just those 5 women. There were other victims. And also, I believe that Jack the Ripper killed some children. And he even bragged about it in his letters. But I want to start by saying this was never my idea. I was invited to Scotland Yard in 2001, and I met with this very senior, esteemed investigator named John Grieve. And he starts talking to me about Jack the Ripper, and I'm thinking, why is he doing this? I'm interested in modern crimes. And then he wanted me to go on a tour the next day through Whitechapel. Long story short, he was basically recruiting me to start looking into this. And then he said, if you're going to do it, he says, you need to look into, quote, a chap named Walter Sickert, who was a painter. His name has come up before, and he said, I'm very suspicious of this particular person. And I said, why can't you do that? And he said, well, we can't investigate a crime when there's no one left to arrest after this many years. But I remain convinced that Walter Sickert, based on paper analysis and the letters, based on historical evidence, based on so many things, I believe he was Jack the Ripper. I know for sure he wrote some of the confessional violent letters that the police received that were signed, catch me if you can, Jack the Ripper, and that sort of thing.
It's super fascinating, and you're absolutely right. There are descendants of the great-great-great-grand category who are still emotional about their descendants dying in that way. These are victims' descendants, and so you're absolutely right. It's a case that deserves to be solved, even if Scotland Yard doesn't have the mechanism to do it. But before I go to a little bit more on Sickert, what do you think about Edward Russell's, positioning that DNA solved the case and that it was Aaron Kosminski? I guess that says a lot.
No, and look, listen, I don't believe it was Aaron Kosminski, and I absolutely do not trust this new DNA analysis, and I'm not the only one. I mean, I'm not a DNA scientist, but people who are legendary in the field, like Turi King and Adam Rutherford. Adam Rutherford says, this is terrible science. He calls it basically rubbish. And Turi King has been very vocal about the same sort of thing, that there are huge questions. And I will also point out one thing that's really important. We don't know for sure that the provenance of that so-called, shawl really did belong to Catherine Eddowes. If you look at the original police sketch, a crime scene sketch that was done at the time when her body was on the pavement in Mitre Square in the city of London, there is no garment like that around her. And if you read the original police report, there is no mention of something like that. But even if there had been, the contamination of this thing is horrific because it's been handled by so many people over the years. So I do not trust.
Yeah.
I call it fake news.
I have 10 seconds left, but I'd be remiss if I didn't just list out a couple things that point to Edward Sickert, or Walter Sickert, sorry. He had a hatred of women. He had an obsession with killers, especially Jack the Ripper. He painted 4 paintings of another murder, the Camden Town murder. The letters to Scotland Yard, written on what looked like his stationery with the same watermark, and DNA from a stamp also is said to have a link to Sickert. With 5 seconds left, I have to ask you, and I'm so out of time, Patricia, but will we ever definitively know, yes or no?
I don't think we're ever going to get that from DNA, even if we got lucky with finding some sequences in common, and we did with the analysis that we did. Definitively, there's just not enough evidence left. It's too late for that. But there is such a thing as circumstantial and composites, and I think it points at Sickert, and I don't think that's going to change.
Thanks for watching.
Go to joinnn.com to find NewsNation on your screen. And don't forget to click the red subscribe button below to get more of NewsNation's fact-driven, unbiased coverage.